Hi, Mickey.
Hey, Bob.
Look like you've got a little, is that a book? I can't read it, but you're about to light a candle in front of it. Maybe that will help. The title of the book is, don't burn your finger, Mickey. Yeah.
Don't worry. It's a little shrine I have. It's just starting here. The book is Hillbilly Elegy by JD Vance.
Oh, by JD Vance. Well, Mickey, yeah, go ahead.
I have some votive candles that I'll surround it with later that are electric, not actually burning. And I think we can add some JD Vance merch as the campaign progresses.
Let's do that. But, first, I've got a little visual prop myself this week, Mickey, in a departure. Okay?
Uh-oh.
Okay. Do you know what this is? You know what that is?
A tinfoil hat, a paper airplane, an envelope with a lot of cash in it.
Okay, but this part of it, what is this part of the envelope called?
The thing you lick.
Mickey, it's a flap. It's the envelope flap, okay? And you know what I'm going to be this week?
You're going to create a flap.
Wrong.
Because you're going to take on Eric Weinstein in a mano debate.
I'm going to be unflappable this week, okay? Like, if this is you, this hand, and this is me, and you're going to be like going, trying to make it flap. Can't do it. Because I'm going to be unflappable because last week you trolled me into heatedly denouncing JD Vance, and then your little fanboys in the comment section heatedly denounced me for heatedly denouncing JD Vance. Yeah, you said that because you want me to keep it up.
No, because there were complaints that you were lethargic, and you were anything but lethargic.
Well, from the previous week, there were complaints that I was lethargic.
Well, you weren't lethargic last week. So,
no, I wasn't. But there's got to be a happy medium. I thought we had
a vigorous ventilation of the issues.
Yeah, you would love me to keep that up, but I am just going to be a picture of equanimity.
Bob, I grew up in a highly contentious family, and I'm used to people yelling at each other.
Well, I encourage you to try this week to troll me into heatedly denouncing JD Vance.
That was such a pathetic gimmick, that flap thing.
Well, it was kind of a parody of some of yours.
Oh, parody, I see. Well, I gotta blow out this scented candle before
why don't you? Something bad could happen.
But yes.
But we can save JD Vance for later. What should we talk about first?
Well, we got the most important thing is this big infrastructure deal. But I know you think that's boring.
Let's save. I mean, that's too sexy to start off with.
JD Vance. We have Mark Milley. I was stunned. I mean, he
chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff.
It came out that he said that Trump people were brown shirts and he all sorts of leaks about how he stopped Trump from bombing Iran and how he stopped, he was worried there was a Reichstag fire, all of which was fine, but it was so politicized. I figured he'd already quit and joined the college lecture circuit. It turns out he's still there. How can he still be chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff when he's so vocally on one side? I don't think he can do it. I think he has to quit.
Well, first of all, as for why it happened, a book came out by two Washington Post reporters, or it's about to come out, and they had been working on this stuff and interviewing all these people for a long time, and so they had, I guess they have like remarks he made to people at the time. It's not as if he's orchestrating the leaks or as if he ever planned for this to come out.
Our general in Afghanistan, who was one of our best generals, gave a bunch of interviews to a reporter for Rolling Stone and it came out later, and he had to quit.
Yeah, it's
because
funny.
The quotes were bad, okay?
I can't remember his name either, but by the way...
for talking to reporters.
Yeah, remind me of his name. I know you can't remember it, I can't remember it, but...
I can't remember it, and he's dead now. He died in a car crash over there.
Wait, he died? Oh, the reporter died.
The reporter died, yeah.
Yeah, but the general's name...
McSomething.
McChrystal. I actually met him, by the way. I actually met him. But I wanted, as long as we're on the subject, that was bullshit. Obama firing him, the way that story was billed was, well, if he's going to openly disrespect Obama, he's got to go. Well, actually, that situation was analogous to this. What Rolling Stone reported was that some people claimed that he had said these things to them about Obama. Whereas, it was portrayed as if he's openly defying Obama. He wasn't. I mean, he may or may not have said those things behind closed doors, but he didn't intend for them to come out. Same thing here, probably.
Look, at some point, if you're enough of your aides talk to enough reporters, people don't trust you to control the next demonstration. Okay. People just, what if there's a fraught situation where the army has to come in and calm things down? Do you trust this guy? The guy, he says, we're the guys with the guns. We're not going to obey anything Trump says. I'm sorry. You have to trust him.
No, he didn't. Wait.
I actually am not sure I trust him. He hasn't. When has he covered himself with glory? He didn't cover himself with glory routing the demonstrators in front of the White House either. So what is the greatness
what do you mean,
of Mark
routing
Milley
the demonstrators?
That we have to preserve him?
You're talking about when he was famously filmed walking with Trump to that church, and I think that was a big moment for him, apparently, and he was so chagrined by seeming to be part of Trump's authoritarian photo op, because he was not only there, but he was in his combat fatigues, weirdly, that by one of these accounts that came out this week, that was a turning point for him. And he's like, no mas, this ain't going to happen again.
You don't want a guy who's so chagrined that he leans on one side and says no mas, and he's all bound up in his own personal reputation and his own regrets. And screw him. He should quit.
Well, first of all,
get somebody in there who's not tormented like that. Okay, get somebody in there who's going to make an honest judgment call, and not say, oh my God, I have to make up for this photo op with Trump. Oh my God, forget it.
Well, that's their speculation, pretty much. I mean, but. First of all, you said, he said, we're the guys with the guns and don't, follow Trump's orders. A, he didn't say that. He didn't say don't follow any of Trump's orders, even by these accounts. B, I assume that we're the guys with the guns, if he said it at all, was said in the context of, Trump can't do a coup without us. Well, that's actually true.
No, I'm not saying it was an unreasonable thing to, the guys with the guns quote is not that embarrassing at all.
What are the firing grounds here?
Saying that a Trump protest after the election was brown shirts.
This is another
jumping immediately to the Hitler analogy. I understand on January 6th jumping to the Reichstag fire, but he jumped to Hitler in November.
Well, he was prescient then.
He could be prescient on the college lecture circuit.
But this was wait, this was after Trump started saying, I'm not going to respect these election results, right?
Did he put it that way? I thought
virtually
he stopped respecting them.
He conveyed that he would not respect the election results. And by the way, this was when you were saying it was no big deal that he was saying that. And so I would personally take this general over you if in the prescience sweepstakes.
Well, has Trump staged the coup?
No, but obviously even you admitted after January 6th, well, okay, I guess I didn't take this seriously enough. This was for real. Something was more grave about Trump.
That's true.
Denying the election results than you had appreciated.
That's true. But
come on, don't take the wind out of my sails. Continue to resist.
There's new evidence, and that book has a bunch of evidence, not conclusive, that Trump was begged to stop the riot after it started, and he delayed, and so that makes him culpable on that. I haven't read it, so I haven't seen how much evidence there is that he's culpable before of colluding with the rioters, and that he intended the rioters to stop the vote. That maybe that's in there too. I don't know.
I don't know that it says that, but it is an account, as you said, that's at odds with the one you gave us from Michael Wolff. These guys, this book depicts Trump as, quote, riveted to the TV, whereas you were acting as if, for all we know, he didn't even realize there were people at the Capitol. I was
accurately conveying what's in Michael Wolff's book, Bob.
Right.
It is at odds with Michael Wolff's account.
Now, the other interesting thing was, apparently Susan Glasser, and her husband, New York Times reporter Peter Baker, are working on a book, because as soon as these excerpts came out, she came out with a piece in the New Yorker basically spilling some of their reporting in their upcoming book. And that's where I think the stuff about people trying to get us into a war with Iran after the election comes from.
Keep in mind, I don't think what would really be a damning quote is if Trump said, looking at the TV, said, now Pelosi's going to get what's coming to her. It would be good if they got roughed up for a while. I hope they're not too gentle with these guys, okay? Those sorts of killer quotes are not in there, okay?
Well, yeah, you're right. And if he had said, hang Mike Pence, rather than just tweeting as people were in the Capitol that Mike Pence betrayed the country, that would have been even worse.
Or even if he cackled with glee, I'd settle for cackling with glee.
All of these would have been more damning than the reasonably damning stuff we have. But on the Iran thing, interestingly, it's funny. Mike Pence, who plays the good guy on January 6th, is one of the people who apparently wanted us to bomb Iran after the election. And when Milley, I think it is, says, why do you want to bomb Iran? Pence says, because they're evil. Now, meanwhile, Mike Pompeo, who I would have considered more dangerous in foreign policy, than Pence, was against bombing Iran, and that apparently may have been decisive. I don't know. Trump was up for grabs. They had a meeting on January 3rd and convinced Trump not to bomb Iran, according to the Susan Glasser reporting.
Where did this impulse to bomb Iran come from? Was he goaded by Netanyahu or somebody?
She says, yes, that Netanyahu was encouraging it. And various hawks that he associated with was encouraging it. Was Sheldon Adelson still alive then? Or I think he was.
Where was Jared?
I don't know about Jared. That's a good question. I don't think she gets into that. Now, the weird, ambiguous thing that she reports on this January 3rd meeting is that, Trump apparently, I guess after they decided not to bomb Iran, asks Milley and the defense secretary, acting defense secretary Miller, Christopher Miller, if they were prepared for July 6th, the July 6th protests, and they quote Trump as saying, it's going to be a big deal. You're ready for that, right? Now, what does that mean? You're ready for that? So I think some people are taking this as meaning you're ready to participate in the coup, right? Which doesn't sound plausible to me. On the other hand, does Trump think the Joint Chiefs of Staff is in charge of security for the Capitol? I mean,
well, they ultimately did play a role. They were considered calling in the military, I believe. So,
well, the national
he wants to make sure that they were going to keep it under control. That was a very responsible thing for him to say.
Yeah, I guess it's an odd thing. I don't know. I can't quite read it, but it does indicate that he thought it was going to be wild. So anything else in that reporting?
Thank you for the Susan Glasser report. I haven't read it all. I've just read the highlights. So, I literally was stunned to learn that Milley was still in command.
What, you thought he had already stepped down?
Yeah, I mean, all those, yeah. I was ready to interpret, all the dirty little secret of all those military guys is when they resign, they're desperate for money. I don't know why, but they see this as their,
I know why. My father was an Army officer. They don't make any money.
They don't make any money, and they're used to living high on the hog because everything's provided by free, and now they have to pay for it themselves.
Please, could we dissect the phrase high on the hog? Tell you what, in the Parrot Room, do you think
General Milley makes his own coffee?
In the Parrot Room, I'm going to tell you.
He does his laundry the way we humble Americans do?
I'm going to tell you a heartrending story about my youth. Being in a family of 7 living on an Army officer's salary. This is going to bring the tears. I mean, even Mickey Kaus is going to break down sobbing when you hear this story. I'm writing it down. Bob's sad story.
Anyway, this was driven home to me when I went to this, weird People's Mujahideen conference in Paris, which is a weird left-right, I don't know, it's an anti-Iranian organization supposedly funded by the Saudis.
Wait, the MEK? You mean the MEK?
MEK. There's a lot of money floating around, and there were all the retired Joint Chiefs of Staff clapping along with the songs, obviously very well paid for their participation. And they actually sort of grudgingly respected the MEK, I think. But still, they will do incredibly embarrassing things for money. So Millie is all set to cash in.
That is true. In fact, only this week, Michelle Flournoy, who was in the running for Secretary of Defense, was a favorite at one point, was seen doing an MEK appearance where she called for internal regime change in Iran. She got into a lot of trouble and walked it back. But MEK is famous for, so first of all, they used to be they're in a group of Iranians, and Iranian exiles or whatever, who want to overthrow the regime. They're a weird kind of cult thing in a way. They used to be on America's list of terrorists because they have attacked Americans. But then Hillary Clinton delisted them, took them off the terrorist list. Thank you, Hillary. And they pay all kinds of politicians, American politicians get paid large sums of money to speak at their events and legitimize them.
I don't know how much they get paid, but when I was there, I think I've told you this, the people there were Linda Chavez, Rudy Giuliani, Howard Dean, Joe Lieberman, Newt Gingrich, anyway, and a bunch of reporters, bizarrely, some of whom might not have been paid. But the impressive thing was the Joint Chiefs. I mean, Casey, all the big generals were there.
These all retired, right?
Retired, yeah. But the weird thing is, they were clapping and singing along with the semi-fascistic songs. Now, military people value esprit de corps, and they think you should sing along with the songs, and that's fine. It was just weird seeing our top generals singing along with this cult songs.
Yeah, some people, there's been speculation that MEK may have played a role in some of Israel's proxy, assassinations of Iranian scientists and or sabotage of Iranian facilities. No, they are. Why Hillary took them off the list is a fascinating question, but they are.
I thought they disappeared. I didn't realize that they were back.
Oh, they're always around. The MEK is always around. So, now, Mickey, yeah, go ahead.
No, we have a bunch of topics you don't want to talk about, so we're in trouble.
Well, wait, we do have, did you hear about the development in the Jeff Bezos rocket thing?
No.
So, last week, Richard Branson, moved up his launch to beat Jeff Bezos. Now, Jeff Bezos is going to go into space, although Amazon has given us a diagram showing that Jeff Bezos is actually going to cross the line into outer space, whereas Richard Branson came up just short of it. But, or at least Blue Origin has given us, put that on Twitter. But anyway, Bezos, I think Tuesday is scheduled to go up into space. Now here's the development. There was this guy who paid $28 million in an auction, to sit alongside Bezos. He is being replaced now by an 18-year-old Dutch student. And here's the headline and deck in the Times piece. Jeff Bezos picks 18-year-old Dutch student for Blue Origin rocket launch. Oliver Damon will fly to the edge of space after another passenger who paid $28 million for the seat had a scheduling conflict.
Huh.
He had he had lunch. He had to do lunch.
He had to rearrange his sock drawer, yeah.
But.
What movie is that from?
The Sure Thing?
Correct.
Thank you. That was good. I think maybe we warmed up for that in the Parrot Room a few weeks ago. It sounds familiar. Can I just say one more thing about this, Mickey? Just in case you have had any doubt that this whole thing between Bezos and Elon Musk and Branson is about being the alpha male, just in case you've had any doubt, have you seen the Blue Origin rocket?
Yeah, it looks like a penis.
I'm just going to for our viewers, please, could we be more subtle than that? It's ridiculous.
I don't think that was intentional. I assume that just is the way that design broke.
I don't know. Elon Musk doesn't look like that.
I think it's all for the good. It's like the Renaissance Italy where the rich people vie to actually achieve something.
Actually, you know what? I think they're going to rue the day that they did this because maybe not, I might not go that far, but what is happening with these billionaires going up into space on a lark while meanwhile, there's massive flooding in Europe attributed to climate change and ridiculous heat waves in the northwest of America attributed to climate change, is, they are creating a backlash against the super rich that could result in heavier taxation. I mean, in response to the Branson thing, the Congressman Ro Khanna did this tweet that got a lot of traction about, it's time for a wealth tax. I do think with these two guys going up in such close proximity, while we have had these, unusually dramatic events that rightly or wrongly are attributed to climate change, I think you may see a wealth tax get some real traction, which would be okay with me.
I don't know. There's the perfect segue to talking about Congress, Bob. You can't pass that up. You open the door.
Oh.
What's happening in Congress is actually pretty amazing. Forget what they call this, the I word. Forget the I word. We now have a quasi-parliamentary system where the party that gets a majority, even the slimmest majority, passes its whole fucking agenda in one big bill. Okay? We've been lamenting the separation of powers and how the framers made it very hard to do. Okay, this is the tiniest of majorities getting its will. Okay, there is going to be a big bill. Okay? I think the Democrats showed this week that they're determined, they're disciplined. Bernie Sanders and Biden, they came to a compromise. Everybody agreed on this 3.5 billion figure. They're moving ahead quite quickly, as quickly as they can.
Wait, I hate to use the I word, but is this so-called hard infrastructure?
No, this is the
soft.
Total.
This is
the
all
hard
together.
Infrastructure. There's the bipartisan hard infrastructure bill, 1 point something billion, and then there's the big Democratic bill, 3.5 billion, which I think is both whatever's left of the hard and the soft. And I'm talking about the 3.5 billion. They're actually moving faster than the bipartisan bill, and so they may overtake it. And that's going to be a problem because the Democrats' only bill is moving so fast that they're way ahead of now of the bipartisan bill, which people didn't think would happen. So, but the point is, there's going to be a big bill, okay? And it's going to have whatever the parliamentarian says can be in a reconciliation bill, which might include immigration amnesty, okay? Then it includes the PRO Act, which I didn't even realize was in there. And it includes this child tax credit, which I hate, which undermines welfare reform. And it includes taxes on the rich, Bob. That's your segue to Bezos. And the test will be how many people in the House can Pelosi keep on board. Whatever she can get her entire caucus to agree on will pass. Now, I'm not convinced that they won't throw a bunch of stuff overboard because moderate Dems will have cold feet and they all have sort of veto power. She can only lose 3 or 4 votes out of 200 some votes. So she has to please everybody. So it's going to be a lowest common denominator bill, but the denominator might be pretty large. It's going to be pretty massive.
And you're predicting something will pass now.
I predict I think they have to pass some big reconciliation bill. The question is, will it be a watered down shell or will it be the full progressive agenda? It'll be somewhere in between, but yeah, that's what I'm predicting. I'm not saying that this child tax credit will be in it necessarily. I mean, according to David Dayen, who I recommend, if you're looking for people to read, to follow what's happening, he's very well informed, doesn't waste your time, very smart guy. Writes
how do you spell the last name?
Dayen. He writes for the American Prospect, and he has a newsletter about this. And he's the one who told me that the PRO Act was in there, and that he claims that the child tax credit, which I hate, that the period has been shortened. He may talk about that it's already been shortened from down to until 2025, but I think he implied it had been shortened even more than that. So that implies that there's some discontent. The discontent probably has to do with how fucking expensive it is. It's $105 billion a year. So, over 10 years, that adds up to a pretty penny. So there's a tremendous incentive just to shorten that period and save $100 billion. Anyway, I would follow David Dayen.
So, if the consensus or the bipartisan bill on hard infrastructure is overtaken by the Democrat bill on soft, does that make the hard one less likely to pass?
No, I don't think so. I think I'm always of the position that the bipartisan bill makes the hard one easier to say no to because you've got the goodies of the
right,
because
then
roads.
Right.
And but that's not the conventional wisdom. The conventional wisdom is the Republicans are greasing the wheels for the Democrats because they're bringing Manchin on board, and there's also some cost savings, I guess, whatever's in the hard bill they don't have to pay for in the reconciliation bill or something. So the conventional wisdom is it will be a blow to the Democrats' chances if the bipartisan bill dies. I don't believe it.
So
I sort of think the progressive Democrats are happy to sabotage the bipartisan bill because they don't want the moderate Democrats, when it gets to the House, to have leverage to say, well, I can say no to this because I can always go and boast that I've built these bridges.
So wait, you're saying the bipartisan bill will be sabotaged by progressive Democrats?
No, I don't know what's going to happen. Schumer seems to want it, so at least for now. So no, I don't think it'll be sabotaged. Although it's much harder for the Republicans and Democrats to get together than it is for Democrats to get together, realizing this is their one last chance to do absolutely everything before they lose Congress.
Right. So even if the bipartisan bill does fall apart, wouldn't the Democrats come up with a substitute hard infrastructure bill they could agree on? Because they're allowed to use reconciliation 2 more times, we think, right?
Well, that's sort of been, we think it turns out it was harder than we thought to do that. But can they do it again after this current round? I'm not sure. The problem was they had trouble getting it out of committee. There was a glitch. So they can either do it 1 or 2 more times. But they seem to have everything riding on this current round. Keep in mind that what they're voting for now is just, before August, is just the basic budget framework. So they have to pretend to pass that, so then they can come back and amend it through reconciliation, which is where all the meat is. This is just sort of a preliminary vote. The key vote will happen in the fall, if it happens that early at all.
Okay.
I think people expect it to be done by the end of the year.
Okay. But you now think it's likely that both will pass, but both a hard and a soft will pass. Which is good.
No, I think it's likely that that a big reconciliation bill will pass.
At least one.
And it will have hard and soft elements. I do not know if the bipartisan bill will pass, and don't hold me to it passing. I'm not sure it'll pass.
Okay.
There's all these talk among Republicans. Why are we playing along with the Democrats? They're just going to stick it to us anyway. The Republicans really have no clear strategy. It's kind of pathetic, actually. They should be making substantive arguments like that the child tax credit is destroying welfare reform, and try to make some Democrats in marginal seats, more conservative seats, scared that they're going to lose re-election if they vote for this in the bill and peel off some of the bad provisions. But they're not doing that.
They need the kind of leadership they'll have in 2 years when JD Vance is the senator from Ohio.
That's a segue that it's awfully hard not to take.
Feel free. Try to flat me. Go ahead. Make me
as long as I can talk about the child tax credit later, that's fine.
It's quite a price to pay.
I'll be brief. Well, I don't know. It's very hard to say how well Vance is doing. I think he's doing well. He's 6% in the polls. He's very early. It would help if I knew when this primary was being held. I've tried to find out on the web.
He's at 6% in the Senate poll in Ohio?
Yeah.
That's not a very big number. You got 5 in California, and nobody in California has ever heard of you. Still, even the people who voted for you did it by mistake. And
California is a big state, but that was at the end of a grueling campaign, Bob. This is at the beginning of a campaign when he's only begun to fight, and it's a multi-candidate campaign, so it's very hard to get massive numbers, and you might be able to win it with 31% of the vote.
So is the big number still like undecided, or haven't heard of these guys or something?
No, I think there are two candidates who are ahead of him, Timken and Mandel, but they're not wildly ahead of him, and there are two of them, so they're splitting the vote. So it's set up for him. That the thing that seems to be holding him back is his early criticism of Trump, and he's sort of been done a disservice because the way his enemies on the right, and there are many, the conventional Republicans who are terrified of a guy who, has Trumpy positions but doesn't talk like Trump and is sensible. The way they portray it is as if he recently said nasty things about Trump. They were all from 2016. And when he said, I guess I had to suck it up and be for Trump, that was about changing his mind after 2016, not recently. And what he was sucking up, supposedly, I don't know if I quite buy this, was he had to suck it up and admit he was wrong. It wasn't, I have to suck it up and say things I don't believe in to gain political power. It's I have to suck it up and...
But he did say, Trump is like heroin for these people. He's not the real thing, right? Like, wasn't that the idea? Trump is not what they need.
Right. That was in 2016, I believe.
Well, fine. But if he ever believed that, it naturally feeds the narrative that he's kind of, that from their point of view, that he's kind of faking now and claiming to love Trump.
It's a big difference between changing your mind from 2016 and changing your mind from 2019 after Trump's been, and there's no evidence that he's done that. He's been pretty loyal Trump supporter, since early in the Trump administration, I believe. So, people are allowed to change their minds.
But it's interesting how many people in the Republican establishment seem afraid of him, right? There was this Tom Nichols piece in
yeah. Well, Nichols, does he pretend he's not on the left? He's obviously on the left.
Well, what is his deal? Where did he come from?
I don't know. Apparently he pretends to be a conservative, but he's obviously allied with the left. He was the big local anti-Scott Walker reporter in Wisconsin. He writes for The Nation, for Christ's sake.
Wait, Tom Nichols does?
I think so, yeah.
This is Radio Free Tom on Twitter?
I think so. Maybe I'm wrong. I think he saw... Anyway, he seems to me like a guy on the left. He just wrote an invective, a piece of invective in The Atlantic
right.
against Vance, which didn't really add very much. It convinced me... I mean, there's a place for a piece that's full of invective and it's just enjoyable to read, right? That one didn't quite make it. With The Atlantic... It occurred to me in a flash last week that the problem with The Atlantic is it's completely humorless and full of itself. And
that would describe its editor, but
what they desperately need, and everything they do, what they desperately need is a guy like James Walcott, who you enjoy reading just to read him. You look forward to getting The Atlantic every week because you can have fun reading James Walcott. Okay, there's nobody like that. I mean, he tried to hire that person in Kevin Williamson, but the woke people rejected it.
Well, Kevin Williamson wouldn't have been James Walcott, for God's sake.
No, well, he would have been the other side.
Not nearly as talented a writer or as funny. He was just like a firebrand. He was just somebody he would have gotten attention, but he's not like some kind of comic genius.
No, I agree with that. The point of every Kevin Williams piece is, I am the new H.L. Mencken, see me right. Okay, so that gets very tiresome after a while. But he's been much better lately. So anyway, but the point is a performative writer who you read just for the joy of reading his writing. He's not it, but they desperately need one. Tom Nichols certainly isn't it. Anyway,
the good news,
Atlantic sideline.
The good news is they brought in not very long ago Nick Thompson as the president of the Atlantic. He had been editor of Wired. I think he has good editorial judgment, so now all we need to do is get rid of the actual editor, and
That's a very good point. It's like Bill Keller waiting in the basement when Howell Raines was dangling in the wind at the New York Times. They have the replacement ready. All they have to do is get rid of Howell Raines, and Bill Keller could take over. That's a very good point. Anyway,
regime change.
Nicholas Thompson's great, but he has a magazine that's spending $110 million a year.
Well, you saw this story about...
Can you believe that? $110 million? $0.1 billion to put out The Atlantic?
But they're making a lot of revenue. They only lost $10 million.
That's what they say. And they'll be profitable in 2 years, Bob.
I know. That was the thing that Nick sent to the staff. And
Like every news site in the world, they'll be profitable in 2 years.
Laureen Powell Jobs has some resources, I'd be spending big if I had that kind of money.
Right, but the one thing that
I just wouldn't have the same editor.
The one thing that will dissuade her from pouring her money into the Atlantic is if it doesn't look like a success to Steam. And once people realize how fucking boring it is, it may lose esteem. No, I'm serious. If people, as long as people are lauding the Atlantic and saying how great the Atlantic is, it's America's destination for premium writing or brilliant writing or whatever bullshit.
Well, that's what that's what the editor said about
bullshit Jeffrey Goldberg said. As long as she thinks that, she'll pour her money. If people say, "Oh, the Atlantic is boring," she's either going to make changes or stop financing it.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna find that quote because it was pretty bad. I mean, that quote almost was the problem. What did he say? America's premier destination for brilliant writing or something? I mean,
yes,
come on.
That's basically it.
That doesn't rank up there with the in-flight magazine of Air Force One, which the New Republic came up with.
Well, it was in a promotional context, so people always boast in those contexts embarrassingly, but
no, but you got to do a good job of both. I'm an expert on strategically savvy boasting. I'm super good at it.
What's a strategic? I'm super good at it is a good start.
That's what I mean. See, that's better than saying I'm the premier destination for brilliant writing. I'm super good at it is not as bad as I'm the premier. What is the exact quote? The premier home for brilliant the premier home in America for brilliant magazine writing.
How about all the right people like Bob Wright hate us? That would be a good promotional blurb.
And then you spell the first Wright, W-R-I. No, that would be too much.
You could go either way on that.
Yeah. We wear Bob's scorn as a badge of honor is what they should go with. It should say that on the front of every issue of the magazine. So, anyway, back to Tom Nichols' piece in the Atlantic.
So,
I want to say something about it because I think maybe he had it the opposite of right. I mean, part of it I agreed with. He said about Vance, his attempts at authenticity are so grating because they are so blatantly artificial. In other words, his attempts to seem like an authentic Trumpist. I mean, this is what I've been complaining about is kind of the way he says all the things you're supposed to say if you're the next Trump, and they just don't seem that right.
He's secretly responsible. You will not see him talking about stop the steal. Doesn't talk a lot about voting fraud.
He did the equivalent of that. We talked about that. That's what you trolled me with last week. Because I was saying, they said, do you think Joe Biden is, they said the genuine president, they meant the legitimate president. Anyway, he refused to say yes. And he started saying, well, there really are questions about the election.
But legitimate is a loaded word. You're asking for too much. If he said, is he the president and was he elected? He would have said yes. He didn't say, oh, Trump really won and these voting machines sluiced the votes to Biden. He didn't talk about any of that. He said there was unfairness in the press, which there was, and that there was a lot of unfairness, which there was. He gave the most anodyne possible, the Trumpists know the difference between that and the real thing. That's the one reason he might not succeed is because he's too milquetoasty in his Trumpism.
No, he said some pretty election skeptical things. I think
I deny it.
He indulged the election truthers and was afraid of alienating them very much as that QAnon adjacent tweet that he did, and I think maybe deleted eventually, was an attempt to indulge them.
Of course he's afraid of alienating them, but that doesn't mean he indulged them.
Well, anyway,
he's doing what Biden did with his voting rights speech, which is trying to seem as stentorian and emotional on their side as possible, which wasn't really very in this case, without endorsing their specifics.
Well, the part I think Tom Nichols has wrong, I mean, it really was not it really was, it's exactly what you said. It was an attempt to be funny and kind of cool, funny, and it was like dad funny and not funny. Yeah. It was like, because the shtick was, now I'm not going to call him an ass and say that the problem with, I'm not going to use the word asshole, and in the end he uses it, and the thesis of the piece is that Vance is an asshole. And I think actually the deal with Vance may almost be the opposite. That the reason he seems inauthentic in trying to be like Trump is because maybe he's actually not an asshole. I mean, like Matt Gaetz and Josh Hawley can do a pretty good, they can seem pretty authentic. And I think certainly in the case of Gaetz and probably Hawley, that may be because they are actually assholes. It's right. Like easy for them to rev it up.
Trump.
And I think,
right. I've had some dealings with Vance and he seems completely authentic and totally not an asshole. He's the problem for the reason the right is so scared of him is he's hit on the formula that seems to work for Boris Johnson that seems everybody thinks will work, which is go right on culture and left on big government, affirmative government, entitlement programs, the government helping people, which is sort of where he's heading, and that would displace all the old Republicans who made a big deal about small government and cutting taxes. And as another Peter Thiel candidate, Blake Masters, said in Arizona, Paul Ryan thought voters wanted more immigration and less health care. It turned out it was the opposite. And the Vance Thiel Masters Republican Party wants more health care, less immigration, which is the antithesis of the old Republican Party. And what's more, Vance seems like a nice enough guy who can say nasty things like, we need to control our borders and get away with it. So he's incredibly scary to them, and they have to shoot down his missile as it's on the launch pad.
So you don't think...
Which they're trying to do.
You don't think they fear his foreign policy?
I actually don't know what his foreign policy is.
Well, could you find out for us? I'd like to know how unflappable I can remain. I don't know whether I should find him.
He sure doesn't seem like a hawk. And the Trumpist position sure isn't a hawk and isn't hawkish.
Well, I mean, supposedly, but then Trump comes closer to bombing Iran than anybody else has. I mean, and in fact, does bomb. I mean, he assassinates their...
I don't think
Soleimani.
I don't think JD Vance is secretly related to Jared Kushner. So, I think we're safe there. But that's a black area I do not know.
You know, somebody should do a good piece on Peter Thiel. By the way, he's more and more into politics. He's backing, Vance and the other guy you mentioned.
Well, sure. If those two win, he'll have 1/50th of the Senate.
Well,
on his side.
No, but I mean,
yes,
come on.
I agree. It's an important piece.
He's plus his whole, am I wrong? Or is he not a professed libertarian who makes software for authoritarians? Isn't that like a big part of his deal?
The extent to which he's a professed libertarian, he's a very complicated guy with a bunch of complicated beliefs. And I don't think saying he's a libertarian captures them. So I don't think there's hypocrisy there, but I would be interested in what his answer is there. I think he has one. I mean, now, I don't know what it is, but
you saw my piece on his a guy who manages some of his money, Eric Weinstein.
Yeah, we were going to get to that.
Okay.
So do you want to get to that here?
You want to? No, we don't
the,
have to. We can. I mean, it is in the news. I encourage people to check out the Non-Zero newsletter where it can be found. But yeah, we can do subtext in the Parrot Room. The text is in the newsletter. The subtext is in the Parrot Room. That could be the Parrot Room's motto.
I thought your article on JD Vance was excellent. Eric Weinstein was excellent. It actually delivered the goods. I thought you were faking it all along. It turned out you actually knew a lot about Eric Weinstein, and
I went down the rabbit hole.
It told me what I wanted to know about the guy. Was not a hit piece, although I'm sure he thinks it was a hit piece, being a thin-skinned guy. And I note that the one thing I have to add is that, you make it sound a little conspiratorial that he thinks there was a secret NAS study that encouraged people to let in more H-1B immigrants, saying falsely there was a shortage of high school workers. And I think that's probably true. I mean, there's this guy, Norm Matloff, who is the expert on the subject, who thinks for himself, who wrote in response to your piece that basically saying, as I read it, that what Eric Weinstein said was a fairly accurate description of what happened.
I don't know about that, but I actually did say in the piece, look, it wouldn't surprise. I mean, he was talking about a National Academy of Sciences study that found that there was going to be a shortage of scientists and engineers. That, he says, was then used to build support for the H-1B provision in the 1990 Immigration Act and let a lot of foreigners in to universities and so on, which Eric is opposed to. I actually said it wouldn't surprise me. At the end of the piece, I said, no, that part, it wouldn't surprise me if the National Academy of Sciences was like they knew, for example, university presidents would like to get cheap grad students. And I don't doubt that some tech CEOs threw in their influence and that there was that kind of bias. Now, whether there was first a quote secret study and then the real study, I don't know about that. But no, my point was, this shit happens all the time. Like, I mean, this is the way the world works. And it's not that he has an overly grand kind of meta theory about it, this disc thing. And by the way, I could have been harder on him. I mean, he's just an interesting guy. But no, I didn't deny that.
It's always a great thing to say to your interview subjects. I could have been harder on you.
I didn't interview him. I took
your profile subject. Sorry.
There's also the conversation I had with the guy who's done the critique of his grand theory of physics is actually getting a lot of attention on YouTube. Meanwhile.
Okay, and so Parrot Room for that.
Yep.
Yesterday was Child Tax Credit Day. The checks started to go out. These $300 to $600 checks, $300 per kid, $250 per kid, to basically every family unless you make over $100,000. I'm generalizing wildly, and the point is, if you don't work at all, you still get the check. And Biden's talk, you would think, it was all going to working families. Every other word Biden said yesterday was working families, unless he said hardworking families. And he touted this alleged study from Treasury saying that 97% of the recipients of the child tax credit will have a job or a source of self-employment income. And the other 3% includes grandparents taking care of their kids and people who are really disabled. That reeks of bullshit. I mean, first, the Treasury had put out a release that day. They didn't mention this study, okay? So you envision, like, did Gene Sperling, who's the point man on this, get on the phone and said, we need a statistic right away, come up with a good one. And they came up with this 97% figure. They must have counted, like, if you earn $1, they must say, okay, you have a job. That's the only way they could have gotten to 97%. There are 26 million children who are going to get more money as a result of this, what I call the Biden dole or the child tax credit. Of those, 8.8 million have, didn't get any money before, okay? That means they made less than $2,500 a year. So we were below the cutoff. And he says that, so we have 8 million who are below 2,500, and out of 26 million, he says 97% of those have jobs? No, that can't possibly be true. Unless you count every dollar, even like $3, even Parrot Room money. They're going to count Parrot Room money as having a job.
We're doing okay in the Parrot Room, Mickey. We're over the 900 Patreons number, and we got our eyes set firmly on 1,000.
No, we would be nearing the phase out period.
They should count us as employed.
I'm joking, but the point is that they're counting, small bits of incidental income. They must be counting. I don't know how they did it. I would like to see them justify it. It seems it reeks of bullshit to me.
So we can count Mickey skeptical. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, but I mean, the point is, Biden is boasting, I'm giving these tax credits to working families. Fine, give them to working families. Don't give them to the non-working families and talk about how you're giving them to working families. Restrict it to the working families. Then everybody would agree you can increase the amount. You can encourage children. We can not be like Japan. We can have babies out the wazoo. Because most, working families are most of the people. So give it to the working families and everybody's happy. No, he's pursuing the left-wing agenda of sneaking in the checks to the non-working families. So we recreate the underclass on the dole, people who never get married, never go to work. And we're going to have many more families like that. And it's going to be a social disaster. And I don't understand why a guy like Gene Sperling, who worked for Bill Clinton, whose big achievement was ending that, is now working to undo it. It makes no sense to me.
Have you asked Bruce Reed what's going on here?
I haven't asked Bruce Reed. I like Bruce Reed, whereas Eugene Sperling was sort of a jerk in a debate we had at KCRW. So we're going after Gene Sperling.
Oh, so it's all coming out now. So
I assume Bruce Reed. I don't know what Bruce Reed thinks. I haven't talked to him. Gene Sperling is the guy who's out front.
Well, I'm glad we uncovered Eugene Sperling vendetta, lest people think you were...
Gene Sperling is the point man for the child tax credit. He's a legitimate... you're allowed to say, Gene, what are you doing? Why do you think this is a good thing? You're undoing Clinton's big domestic achievement. He's undoing it. Okay. I don't understand it. I mean, he can say, I sucked it up and moved to the left. That's probably what happened, but I wanted to hear him say it.
Okay. Sorry about the vendetta.
Everybody's sucking it up here. But I do wonder what Bruce Reed is doing. What does Bruce Reed think?
What's his positioning and what's his job?
He's one of the 5 top strategists for Biden in this secretive cabal that runs the country. You never find out anything about what he's doing. They're all very tight-lipped. There's no Maggie Haberman reporting on what they do. And it's very curious. I don't know.
Wait, this is a story. There is a 5-person cabal secretly running the country. Well, I think we're getting somewhere. Finally, it's taken us. How long we've been talking? 50 minutes?
It's been written.
You should lead with this shit, man.
This has been written up. There's Ricchetti, there's Bruce Reed, there's Donnellan, there are a couple other people, and they're Biden's key advisors, and they send the orders down that are then carried out. I don't think Gene Sperling is one of them. So
Do they invite Biden to the meetings?
Yeah, no, they work it out with Biden. I think Biden's all there. I'm not in the Tucker Carlson camp that they prop him up. Obviously they don't. He goes out and he talks very slowly, but he makes sense eventually in Biden speak.
Yeah, but
I think Biden is making the decisions. He's obviously susceptible to influence, but so is everybody.
But this is not the Biden speak of old. I'm sorry. The sentence structure.
No, it's a lot worse. But
is a mere shadow of its former self, such as it was. I mean, remember the early part of the Trump administration, people were arguing. I remember there was a Slate Trumpcast episode about this, that, wow, his verbal skills are obviously going downhill. And it was just kind of obviously not true. The guy had never been William Jennings Bryan. And if you compared what he said in his like 30s or 20s, I mean, yeah, it was a little sharper. That's true of all these politicians. But there wasn't some kind of qualitative change. I think in this case, it's easier to make the case that there is. I agree. He's still with us.
He never seems confused or out of it or clueless, or only rarely seems clueless. Put it that way. Kamala Harris seems
Mickey's
a lot more
blurb for Joe Biden. He only rarely seems clueless.
Kamala Harris seems a lot more clueless than Biden.
Yeah, we're this is our common cause, is keeping her from being the next nominee, I think. Although actually, I mean, you might want her to be the next nominee so that your man, JD Vance or somebody can win.
DeSantis Vance, take the chance.
That's a good one.
What you don't want is Trump again. And, Scott McConnell came up with the formulation, Trump did a lot of good for the party. He changed the party's stance on issues, but now he's become a liability. It's time to retire him. Scott McConnell, he's a conservative writer, very smart guy, said, this is so obviously the right position that I don't understand why people are resisting it. And I agree with him.
I'm wondering if I'm getting Tom Nichols mixed up with somebody else, but I had taken him to be, a kind of classic resistance figure, but kind of hanging out more with the conservatives in the resistance.
You are. I think you're confusing him with the guy who writes for the Naval, is a professor.
Yeah, that's it. Who's that guy?
I think his name is Nichols too.
It's also confusing. So can
I may be confusing. Maybe. I think this is the guy from Wisconsin though.
Yeah.
Who predicted it's all over for Scott Walker when it wasn't all over for Scott Walker.
Nichols. I think you're right, because I once did a nasty tweet about one Nichols, and maybe this wasn't the Nichols.
It's better than the Tom Franks. There are about 15 of them.
There's
and
two.
Boy, are they easy to confuse.
Two key ones, both liberals, or at least both, somewhere in that zone. So can I say something about foreign policy?
Sure.
I just want to amend my Afghanistan remarks. I think last week, either here in the Parrot Room, I said that our original sin in Afghanistan was arming the rebels, which is true, just treating them like, fodder, and that led to all kinds of shit. 9/11 might not have happened had we not started that off in the Carter administration all the way back then. But the other thing, and I say this because this is a week when it's becoming clear that the Taliban, has like big league momentum. They could take I even heard some word of like maybe our troops are going to return to Bagram base or something. But maybe that was bullshit. Anyway, it's happening fast. I just want to add that George W. Bush, the Afghanistan war was very different from the Iraq war, both in the sense that there was nominally a legitimate cause. They had harbored Al-Qaeda as Al-Qaeda attacked us, A, and B, it was a legal war because it got Security Council backing. However, the truth is that the ultimatum we gave Afghanistan before we invaded, when we told them what they'd have to do to keep us from invading, it was designed to be prohibitively stiff. It wasn't just turn over bin Laden. It was, and let us come in your country and go anywhere we want and uproot anything we designate a terrorist camp and so on. It was hauntingly reminiscent.
That's very similar to the ultimatum we gave Milosevic after the Kosovo thing. Clearly was, it said we can go, and you have to agree that we can go anywhere in your country and do anything we want, and nobody's going to agree to that.
And
so it was designed for him to refuse. But that does that vitiate the UN approval?
No, but it means
the UN must have known that was going to go on.
But it means that, and by the way, speaking of Serbia, it's also reminiscent of the ultimatum Austria gave Serbia in 1914 or so, which was just unmeetable. And Serbia had just bent over backwards, but didn't do the politically out and out impossible things. And as a result, World War I happened. But no, I'm just saying it might have been possible to avoid this whole disaster. And actually get them to turn over bin Laden. But Bush didn't try. He didn't want that. He literally did not want that to happen. He wanted a war.
Mike Isikoff has a podcast on the conspiracy to kill Khashoggi. I don't know how you pronounce
I think that's maybe about right.
And it uncovered all sorts of stuff like that Khashoggi was, as I was told, I haven't heard it, good friends with bin Laden and in constant communication with him.
Was he?
You have to listen to the podcast, but it complicates our view of Khashoggi.
Well, he was a columnist. Columnists need sources.
I agree. I would, if I had bin Laden on the phone, I wouldn't hang up on him.
Totally.
What the hell? But
a source close to Al-Qaeda.
So maybe he could have gotten, I don't think he could have gotten bin Laden to come in from the cold, but more people were in contact with bin Laden than we thought. He was a great guy, gave good parties.
Bin Laden, toward the end of his life, he became something of a recluse, as I understand it.
We don't remember those years. We remember the go-go years.
Also, this Cuba mess.
Well, I don't understand why why is it? I don't understand what's the big. It's certainly not as big a mess as the Haiti mess. The Cuba mess. There were democracy protests. Great, good thing. They got repressed. Bad thing. We condemn the repression. We call for democracy, and that's all we do. I mean, the response is so obvious. We shouldn't invade. We shouldn't bomb them. Maybe we sour on them and sanction them a little bit. But that's what the Cubans do. This is progress. This is progress that the people are getting so pissed off that they're actually demonstrating.
There is genuine misery there amid a pandemic, and we aren't just sanctioning them a little. We're sanctioning the hell out of them. Trump is the one who brought the clamps down after Obama loosened them, and Biden hasn't fundamentally changed that policy.
You want to respond to the Cuban repression of the protests by loosening the sanctions?
Well, the timing would be politically awkward, but we never had a right to do it in the first place.
Kidding.
What? Yeah, but this is a complete fucking travesty. I mean, if we had not had a blockade for 6 decades, by the way, maybe it's not working super efficiently if 6 decades later we haven't accomplished whatever we meant to accomplish. If we had had full economic relations with Cuba since the early 60s, I think the situation would be totally different. It would be like the 51st state. And also like, what right does the government have to keep my government, to keep me from doing business with somebody in Cuba if I want to?
You've picked a particularly bad time to beat this drum. And it's also very reminiscent of if we have full commercial relations with China, they will become more capitalist. Didn't happen.
They did become more capitalist.
No particular reason.
No, they did become more capitalist.
More democratic.
Well, actually, the people there have more freedom than they did during the Cold War.
It's entirely possible that the Castro would have used it to keep himself in power. He's not an idiot. And presumably he knows how to pull the strings. I mean, this is the entire bipartisan consensus was we should get rid of the sanctions. And I've talked to a few smart people who were slightly skeptical of this.
Wait, the consensus was get rid of the sanctions?
Yes.
Why didn't it happen?
Well, didn't Obama get rid of it in Trump?
For 3 years, but I mean 3 years out of 60, yeah.
Well, but that Obama was reflecting the foreign policy consensus.
Mickey, seriously, who the fuck are we to be inflicting misery on all of these countries? And we do it, Venezuela, Iran, Cuba, Syria, during a pandemic, no less. During a pandemic.
We don't have to trade with people we don't want to trade with. We're a sovereign country.
Well, then who is my government to tell me who is my government to tell me who I can trade with? What right do they have to tell me?
They tell you a whole bunch of things.
Well, fuck that. What right do they have to tell me who I can and can't trade with?
You can't post on Facebook. That's a lot more troubling than you can't trade.
There's a lot of troubling things about that. Seriously, though, Mickey, I mean,
what about
don't
South
have
Africa?
A problem.
I was for the South Africa sanctions, and they sort of worked. There was a government telling you can't trade with South Africa.
Well, that was a stronger case than Cuba, for God's sake. That was flat out racial segregation and formalized discrimination.
Now we're just haggling over the price, Bob.
Now, give me a break. So why? So okay, then if there is a price, if there is some criterion, some threshold above which we do sanction people and below which we don't, why are we sanctioning Iran but not Saudi Arabia and Egypt? Or, there's just no coherence to the thing.
Because foreign policy is always a model. We need Saudi Arabia and Egypt in a way we don't need Iran.
What do we need them for? We don't need them for shit. What do we need them for? We need them to fight Iran in your mind. But that returns us to the question, like, what threat is Iran to us?
The point isn't that they were an active threat. The point is that they don't have a positive goodie to hand us.
Oh, so we should sanction everyone who doesn't have a positive goodie to hand. What would that be? Like a Snickers bar?
Foreign policy is complicated. Now that we're on the spectrum of pragmatism, we may decide that we need the Saudi oil and we need them to sell out the Palestinians in a way that other countries can't do. We need them to finance
we need them to
MEK.
Sell out the Palestinians?
Yes, isn't that what they're doing?
Well, among other things, but why do we need that?
Because it's as long as Israel's there, it's the key to peace in the Middle East.
So sustaining the systematic discrimination against Palestinians is key to getting peace in the Middle East.
No, just letting the Palestinians know that they don't have an unlimited reserve. They don't have an unlimited reserve of support, and they should cut a deal. I'm just saying that there may be considerations that are valid foreign policy considerations, and that's why foreign policy is always the second best calculus, and is not amenable to these blanket statements like what right do we have or what
that's always a good question when the government constrains my freedom.
What about this and what about that?
Okay, so wait. So any question about our foreign policy that assumes the form of what about this and what about that is off limits?
No, but it always degenerates into yes, there are valid reasons.
I'm arguing for coherent policy. I can't tell that you are. Do you think incoherent policies are better?
I think anything that depends on a balancing test and a weighing will seem incoherent to some and not incoherent to others.
Well, you should at least be able to articulate the weighing in a way that makes some semblance of sense. Rather than just say, isn't Iran the evil country? That's what I've been told.
That's not what I said.
Aren't the Palestinians the bad guys that we should continue to punish?
I said the Saudis and Egypt have something to offer in terms of Middle East Israel peace negotiations, and that's why we are loath to offend them. I didn't say they were the good guys.
So meanwhile, I mean, as far as peace goes,
it's a style of argument that grates on me. That's all.
Okay. Well, how about this? As far as peace goes, the biggest, the most massive conflict generated human suffering in the Middle East is the war in Yemen, which Saudi Arabia basically started or massively amped up with its intervention, and we're supporting them. Is that a good price to pay for the continued persecution of the Palestinians, which you seem to think is this thing worth doing or something?
No, I think it's a horrible price to pay, and I'm amazed that the Biden administration is still going along with it.
So, but I thought you said we should support Saudi Arabia.
No, I'm just saying that there are these considerations that might make the policy coherent in a way that you're denying.
Well, I'd love to hear.
I'm not claiming the policy was good. I'm claiming the policy was coherent.
Okay, but what is the coherence? If you're saying we support Saudi Arabia,
so we're going soft on them.
You said we should support Saudi Arabia for the sake of peace, and yet we're supporting them in the infliction of massive death and suffering. Okay, so that part doesn't make any sense, Mickey.
I'm not saying I agree with this. I'm just saying depends how important what they have to offer is, and obviously Biden has decided it's important enough because he hasn't stopped them, has he?
Well, wait, you're saying because Biden does it, it makes sense? What are you saying?
No, I'm saying that there is an argument that what the Saudis have to offer is so important. Yes, we should even tolerate genocide in Yemen, and I don't believe that, but there are people who do, and they're not incoherent. They're just wrong. They're not weighing the lives in Yemen sufficiently. But it's not that they're incoherent. It's not that they're not weighing the lives in Yemen. It's that they've got the calculation wrong. So don't say that they're incoherent. Say that they're cruel and vicious and heartless.
Okay. Well, but but I would just love to hear a rationale according to which it even makes sense.
Well, remember when a certain administration came to the New Republic and we asked him, and I think you asked him or somebody, why are we defending Kuwait and sending troops there? And the answer we wanted was, well, there's a new world order, Bob, that's rule-based and recognizes a higher international authority, and we're just following the UN resolution. And the answer we got was, well, they have a lot of oil. Okay. So if you think it's important that they have a lot of oil, there is a consideration for you.
Well, that doesn't make any sense in this case anyway. I mean, was I wrong to think that you are defending our policy in the Middle East? You're not, or are you?
I'm not. I'm attacking your argument that tries to argue it's incoherent. It's coherent. It might be wrong.
Coherent in the sense that...
Because you've admitted that it's a balancing test. So once you're balancing, then it is possible that there are things that justify not stopping the Saudi war in Yemen.
And the thing you're saying that justifies, arguably, not stopping the Saudi, or not doing a better job on stopping the Saudi war in Yemen, that justifies even supporting the war, even as we speak, is getting Saudi Arabia to, as you put it, abandon the Palestinians or something?
I don't think it justifies it, but obviously Tony Blinken does, right?
Well, yeah. So, I mean, that's the problem.
You don't argue that he's wrong. We've been through, this is getting tiresome. Argue that he's wrong. Don't argue that he's incoherent. Obviously.
So are you basically saying that our policy,
that might outweigh the genocide in Yemen? Are
you saying our policy is do whatever Israel wants us to do?
No.
A lot of it could be explained that way, but other than that, it's really hard for me to see coherence in this policy.
I mean,
I mean, Israel does want us to have the policy we have towards Saudi Arabia and Iran and UAE.
Isn't the realist position that we tolerate a bunch of bullshit in order to achieve what we want, and what we want might be a permanent Shiite Sunni conflict where the Saudis and Iran go head to head, and we're sucking up to the Saudis to help achieve that.
There are virtually no people who are realists who favor that, who think what we're doing in the Middle East makes any sense at all, if that's an answer to your question.
Wasn't George H.W. Bush a realist, and wouldn't he have tolerated this? Wouldn't Brent Scowcroft have tolerated it?
They didn't have particularly, compared to Trump, they didn't have particularly pro-Israel policies.
Right, that's my point. They were pro-Israel, yet they would have tolerated this. So it's not just we're doing Israel's bidding. It's that in a realist view of the world, you might tolerate this. Wow. Even though George H.W. Bush was the toughest president in Israel,
I don't know why you think. I don't know what evidence you have that he would love this policy. I don't know where that's coming from. But contemporary realists do not.
Did Brent Scowcroft spend the waning years of his life denouncing the war in Yemen? I don't think so.
I don't know, but when he was in office, Saudi Arabia was a totally different kind of actor. Saudi Arabia used to behave responsibly in the Middle East. They didn't used to go around starting wars. That's a product of MBS. It's a new crazy Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, no, MBS is a wild man. He's insane.
Yeah, and it makes no sense to support him, and yet we are.
I agree, but I just don't think that it's incoherent to argue the opposite. I just think it's wrong. We've been through this.
So anyway, you think all these sanctions are fine?
This is the classic Bob reductio absurdum. No,
well,
I just think.
Were you or were you not defending the Cuba sanctions?
No, I'm just saying there's another point of view. And this is a particularly inopportune moment to argue for lifting the sanctions. Politically
inopportune, but the reason I'm bringing it up is because it's the moment when people are paying attention to Cuba and saying, gosh, isn't this regime horrible? Well, the regime might not even exist had we not had this ridiculous policy.
Well, that's the Democratic strategy. The border is collapsing. We're about to get rid of Section 42, which is the health restriction keeping out all the single men who want to come in. So Biden's about to get rid of that. So it's Katie bar the door. We're going to have a huge influx of additional illegal immigrants after the hundreds of thousands that are coming in every month. And so the Democrats are choosing this as the moment to give an amnesty. It's similar timing. Hard to believe they'll pull it off, but they might.
Anyway. Well, I'm willing to cease and desist if you're going to pull out the immigration card. So I guess I didn't keep up the unflappability for a full hour and 12. We should always stop after an hour. I can keep it up for an hour.
Or when Bob loses his cool.
I will say.
I thought you were totally unflapped.
Well, until we got to foreign policy, which I actually care about. I will say finally, this is a good reason to get rid of the Electoral College. I mean, if the Democrats didn't think Florida was gettable as a state, it would be a lot easier to have a rational Cuba policy. Isn't it weird that there's two kinds of ethnic lobbies? The kind that want to overthrow the regime of the country they're associated with, and the kind that don't?
Well, in as my friend Annie Bardak noted, in Florida, they're the latter, the ones kind of overthrow, and there are three countries they want to overthrow: Cuba, Haiti, and Venezuela.
We didn't even talk about Haiti.
And they're
wait, the Cuban exiles want to overthrow the Venezuelan regime?
No, the Cuban exiles want to overthrow the Cuban regime. The Venezuelans want to overthrow the Venezuelan regime, and they're 100 different players in Haiti who think they're the next president of Haiti.
Well, and witness this guy in Florida, the Haitian doctor who they now think may be behind this thing.
Anyway,
so
my friend Amy Wellens did weigh in with a very good article on The Nation that I didn't make it all the way through.
By the way, I had
very long.
My sophomore roommate was a pre-med from Haiti, and when I first heard about this doctor in Florida, I was hoping it would be him, because I thought I could probably get him on my show, but it's not. Different Haitian doctor.
That's like what Mike Kinsley used to think was the ethos of the White House Correspondents' Dinner. We had Hitler at our table, right? I had Duvalier on my show.
Yeah.
This is your Osama bin Laden thing. I have Osama bin Laden on the line.
That is the ethos of the establishment. So
okay, well, I have more to talk about in the Parrot Room.
Well, I'll write it down. Hold on. We already have Bob's sad story from his youth. I want to talk about this guy. What's his name? Jocko something. He's the SEAL. Do you know that this former SEAL who's now Jocko something? I'll come up with his last name.
No.
Anyway, Eric Weinstein piece will give you the subtext. The text is in my newsletter. We'll give you the subtext. Mickey will critique it or something, and I will elaborate. I'll tell you how much kinder I was than I might have been. Also, I've looked a little more into Bret's stuff, because again, originally the grand unifying hypothesis was that they're both cranks. We'll continue to explore the Bret side. I've looked into his both his COVID stuff and a little more into his evolutionary biology stuff.
Is crank the same as crackpot? You use those words interchangeably.
Yeah, what happened is that I was interviewing this guy who has critiqued Eric Weinstein's grand theory of physics, and he used the word crackpot spontaneously. So that
I'm a crank, but I deny that I'm a crackpot.
Huh. Well, we can explore that in the Parrot Room, the crackpot distinction. Okay, so what is your stuff?
I have an empirical observation about blacks in public-facing jobs.
Blacks.
There's the Aspen Information Disorder Commission, which sounds very scary. We have Abigail Shrier's book being apologized for very flamboyantly by the booksellers.
Wait, what's her name? Abigail
Shrier.
Okay.
She wrote this book on transgender dysphoria in teenage girls and how it's sort of a hysterical epidemic.
Okay.
And it's one of the most banned books in America. Selling well. We have this article on how Afghans are doing all the raping in Europe, which was shocking.
I missed that one.
We have Ashli Babbitt.
God, Mickey, how many Parrot Rooms are we talking about here? Now, is Ashli Babbitt the woman who was killed?
There's only like 3 or 4 things.
Is she the one who was killed?
Ashli Babbitt is the woman who was shot in the Capitol. Yes.
Right. You have more on that? Oh, I have more on that.
Well, people are saying that the Trump people are making a hero of her, and they shouldn't.
I have something else to say from having watched that New York Times video, which I don't know.
I thought we should maybe go back to you said you had a couple things about Richard Lewontin who died. Maybe you should mention them.
Oh, I could try. We talked about that a little last week, but yeah.
We have. Is Facebook biased, or is it just so sophisticated that it sucks when it doesn't give you the search terms the right wing wants?
Facebook, Mickey, this is like.
Well, okay, so we're not going to run out of things to talk about.
We are not going to run out. But then what if we list all these things and don't get to them, and people complain and demand their money back?
Then what? If we don't get to them?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because last week, somebody complained that I had said I might talk about this Russian movie Stalker, and I didn't, so I should talk about that too. So now I got to add that to the list and increase the chances that people will be disappointed.
Okay, well, I'll stop.
No, go. No,
well, we may talk about other things.
No.
They're not going to lower the Medicare age to 60. They should.
No, you should have stopped. You should have stopped.
Diversity has become a major at universities. Seems ominous.
I think that's they've already gotten their money's worth on that. I think you conveyed the essence of it right there.
Okay.
Diversity. This is crazy.
And there's my law of success stories. So there you go.
Law of, okay. Success stories. So, Parrot Room can be found at patreon.com/Parrot Room. And if you become a patron, you're supporting, like, finer journalism everywhere. Because, Mickey, the big, as I said, I think last time, the big podcast platforms they're going to steamroll us if people don't support local journalism.
Yeah. And you're also making us eligible for the child tax credit if Biden's bill fails, right? We'll meet the income threshold.
Right. And that's important.
Should I have children?
Because we don't want Mickey to have to do real work.
There are all these people who say, Mickey, you don't work. This is work, buddy.
It is work. It is. People don't appreciate that. I
mean, I had to construct my whole shrine. Look at that. Look at the hours of labor that went into that.
Yeah.
I mean, Jesus.
And you think envelopes fall off of trees, folks? I had to go get this envelope. I had to go find it.
I had to order the parrot on Amazon. There you go.
And also we have to buy batteries for the parrot.
That's a good point. The batteries haven't run out yet.
Yeah, but they will if we keep talking. So why don't we move it to the Parrot Room and encourage them to smash the like button if they're still with us.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, I'm sorry about failing the unflappability test. I think we should cut these off after an hour because I can do it for that long.
You flapped, Bob.
I did indeed. So we will see you in the Parrot Room.
See ya.